Jaja, Jaja, Jaja. Go, 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 shine it. Girl, it's your birthday. Go, 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 shine it.
Good evening, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. May I have your attention, please? I have the singular honor and privilege to call this meeting to order. As practices of good corporate governance, may I implore everyone to please be seated. And I think we have a quorum already to start this meeting. Please, may we be seated? And I can understand why a number of folks are still handshaking and greeting each other. This is the first time in 2018 that corporate Nigeria is coming together at an event of this nature. So when directors of the best companies in Nigeria listed on the stock exchange see themselves, it's like annual shareholders meeting. So these are, all of you here tonight, the best of Nigeria's corporate world. May we please give ourselves a round of applause. Indeed, here and in other parts of the world, where you have close to 500 directors of listed companies gathered together, that is the Federal Republic of that country. Because you gentlemen and ladies hold what you call the center of capitalism. So I have the singular honor and privilege to be among you tonight. And on behalf of the Nigerian Stock Exchange and the Convention on Business Integrity, I have the pleasure of saying welcome once again. Part of corporate governance is keeping to time. We all know that. Board meetings, annual meetings have to be held on time because they are statutory. So one of the first rules of corporate governance in the securities market is keeping to time. I'm not sure if that was included in what Tino Awe and Soja Pampa and the rest of their team put together as part of the yardsticks for this tonight, but maybe we'll just include time. Let's keep it to time, yes. So, without much ado, let's make this a business time. And I wish I could recognize almost 500 people here in the audience. But may I single out for recognition the representative of the Vice President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, Professor Yemi Osinbajo. Standing in for him tonight here is Ambassador Chiedu Osakwe, who is the Chief Trade Negotiator and the Director General, Office of Negotiation. Please stand up for recognition, sir. Ambassador Osakwe is standing here tonight for the Federal Republic of Nigeria. May I also recognize a very short list I have. The Chief Executive Officer of the Nigerian Stock Exchange, Oscar Oyema. Please stand up for recognition as well. May I also respectfully recognize the President of the Council of the Nigerian Stock Exchange, Mr. Abimbola Ogobanjo. But standing in here is the immediate past President of the Nigerian Stock Exchange and a former Managing Director and Chief Executive Officer of Access Bank, Aiboje Aig Imokwede. And on this side of this relationship, this handshake between the Stock Exchange and this Convention for Business Integrity, is the co-founder of the CBI, Soji Apampa. Please, let's give him a very big round of applause. If we all, I'm sure we all remember, from that very humble beginning in 1997, when CBI was formed and officially launched at the Muson Center not too far away from here. Today, we're celebrating something very new in the history of the Nigerian Stock Exchange nearly 60 years on. The Stock Exchange takes anti-corruption and business integrity very seriously. And it couldn't have been more pronounced than in the current administration at the Stock Exchange. So I do recognize everyone, the directors of the CBI, as well as members of the Council of the Nigerian Stock Exchange who are here present tonight. Please give yourself a round of applause, please. May I therefore move on quickly and get us to receive the opening remarks and a brief on what the Cgrs is all about. And the man who is doing that is Soji Apampa, the co-founder and vice chairman of the Convention on Business Integrity. Please, you have the floor.
Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the steering board of the Corporate Governance Rating System, Cgrs, the Council and Management of the Nigerian Stock Exchange, and the board and management of the Convention on Business Integrity, CBI, I welcome you to this auspicious occasion. Tonight, we will be honoring the individual directors and companies that have distinguished themselves by their effort, despite the particularly difficult business environment, to demonstrate their preparedness to do the right things and do things right. This is worthy of celebration because for decades, those who habitually did the wrong things and did things wrong appeared to have gotten away with it, even prospered, leaving those wishing to do right or be right in a dilemma. Refuse to join them and risk appearing uncompetitive, or join them and risk damaging your business in the long run. What should one do for the business to continue to grow and remain healthy? The sheer cost of acting unilaterally in such an environment has left many an ethical business founder in Nigeria feeling trapped by a system they have felt powerless to change. This is the classical collective action problem, in which multiple individuals would all benefit from a certain action, but it has an associated cost that makes it implausible that any individual can or will undertake to solve it alone. The situation had been allowed to get out of hand, and leveling the playing field by eliminating corruption and unethical practices as part of the modus operandi for business in Nigeria wasn't going to be so easily achieved. This was not achievable by government regulation alone. For regulation to work, it requires the capacity to set appropriate standards, gather compliance information, and act with appropriate sanctions to modify behavior. With the best will in the world, Nigerian regulators have not had the resources or capacity to be as effective as perhaps they would have liked, and regulation on its own has proved too weak to level the playing field. On its part, business has always preferred self-regulation, but even this has been problematic in that it also requires three things to be in place and functioning effectively together. First, a yardstick by which to measure actual or anticipated behavior. Second, a strong desire to avoid certain unpleasant outcomes and achieve certain positive ones. And finally, a strong internally motivating force, keeping the business acting in congruence with these ambitions. However, in the face of perverse incentives set up by the dilemma that if you refuse to join them, you risk appearing uncompetitive, and if you join them, you risk damaging your business in the long run, self-regulation as a tool that can be used on its own has not been strong enough either to level the playing field. Finally, many experts have suggested that this is a job for stakeholder activism. Labor unions, shareholder associations, civil society have all been touted as possible groups to pressure business into choosing the right behaviors. This on its own has also proved not to be the case. The willingness for one Nigerian to spend his or her resources to work in collaboration with other citizens for a common good, and the ease with which the monitored has been able hitherto to subvert the monitor has all made it very difficult for activists to mobilize and do anything meaningful. The Convention on Business Integrity therefore concluded that the only way forward would be if there were collective action, some kind of collective action mechanism to bring to bear the best of government regulation together with self-regulation of business, the activism of civil society, which now has resulted in the corporate governance rating system. The Cgrs is based on standards set by the Companies and Allied Matters Act, CAMA, the Code of Corporate Governance by the Securities and Exchange Commission and the Corporate Affairs Commission, regulations of the Nigerian Stock Exchange, anti-corruption and disclosure principles of the UN Global Compact. It is a rating system based on the one designed originally for use by signatories of the Convention on Business Integrity to gather compliance information, and by linking it to tradable instruments of the stock exchange, it promises a direct connection between the quality of board decisions and the fortunes of the listed company, thereby working towards a mechanism for behavior modification. The Cgrs enhances regulatory efforts of government and self-regulation ambitions of business. By publishing ratings, it will also provide information that will ultimately be used by stakeholders to improve the effectiveness of their activism, and as every listed company is covered by it, it will not be easy for anyone to free-ride the initiative. The Cgrs has three components: an independently verified self-assessment test done by companies, a fiduciary awareness certification test administered on directors, and feedback on actual behavior of companies in the marketplace done through a corporate integrity assessment, through stakeholder surveys and analyses. The entire process is governed by a steering board consisting of Mrs. Pukanla Rufai, who's seated table E there, representing the Securities and Exchange Commission, Ms. Tinu Awe, representing the Nigerian Stock Exchange, the media represented by Mr. Wole Famurewa, formerly of CNBC Africa, a rating agency represented by Mrs. Vivian Shobo of Augusto & Co., and myself, Mr. Sojia Pampa of the Convention on Business Integrity, representing civil society, and finally, Mrs. Cynthia Akpomudiere, head of the Cgrs Secretariat, hosted by the Convention on Business Integrity. Once again, tonight, we're here to honor the companies that scored 70% and above in the Cgrs overall, and the directors who scored 70% and above in their fiduciary awareness certification test. These are the pioneers, bucking the corruption and unethical practices trend in Nigeria and disturbing the equilibrium of the playing field towards leveling it for all businesses. As about 96% of Nigerian private sector is made up of small and medium enterprises, according to the IFC, a new initiative to rate the quality of governance and controls in small and medium enterprises to complement the efforts of listed companies, driven by the Nigeria Local Network of the UN Global Compact, hosted by the Nigerian Economic Summit Group, with the Convention on Business Integrity acting as independent facilitator, will be announced before the end of March 2018. This, we believe, will add a significant boost to the momentum of the CGRS. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, it's my singular honor to welcome you to this momentous occasion on behalf of the steering board of the CGRS. I thank you very much.
Please, another round of applause for Soji Apampa. I think when the market reopens tomorrow, I'm going to be watching very closely the share price of these 33 companies. Because you've got to trade integrity. If you stand for integrity, if you do corporate governance, then it should count with investors. And that will send a very strong signal to others to also be of good behavior. I think we are set for the first set of the certification presentation, and this will be for the directors of the following companies, and in a manner of speaking, they're coming in an alphabetical order. So you just go through page 5 or page 6, more precisely, page 6 of your, if you have a copy there, and then you can just follow through, because quite a very lengthy list of the directors, but of course we'll not be getting everyone here by name, but we will have 2 presenters who will do the first part of this presentation ceremony. Then the directors of each of these companies will stand at their table for recognition, and then they can have their photographs over there. But their representative will please step forward to the podium here to receive the award on behalf of the directors of each of these companies. So I have the pleasure of inviting Mr. Seyi Osunkeye, who is a member of the Council of the Nigerian Stock Exchange, to please step forward to the podium. Please, let's give him a round of applause, please. Mr. Osunkeye, please. And supporting him is Ms. Oluwayemi Shoile, who is the director at the Convention for Business Integrity. Please, another round of applause for her, please. Now, may I have the first certificates, please? On behalf of the Nigerian Stock Exchange and the Convention on Business Integrity, I have the pleasure of inviting all the directors of Abe Mortgage Bank PLC to please take a stand. Please, a round of applause for them, please. Thank you very much. And please, me, a representative of these directors of Abe Mortgage Bank PLC, please step forward and come to the podium. And that will be the chairman of the company, please.
These companies are Cgrs certified.
Applause, please. Please, may I please implore the men of the, to please clear the corridor so that we can have please clear the aisle and let's have the round of applause, please. Just tell them to stand very well and line up. Just put him on the seat. Just put him on the seat over there so that she can handle it. Less people. Okay. Coming next, and thank you very much. We please implore Ms. Soile and Mr. Oshukere to please stay behind. The next is AG Leventis Nigeria PLC, and the directors, are they here? Please stand up for recognition, and the chairman to please step forward to the podium. Please let's give a round of applause. AG Leventis Nigeria PLC. And the next is Better Glass PLC. Please, can we give these folks a round of applause? Thank you. And the next is on the list is Berger Paints Nigeria PLC. And coming up next, after Berger Paints, do we have the directors and the chairman here, please, to receive this certification? Please step forward very quickly. And the next is Curveting Offshore Support Group PLC. Dangote Flour PLC. Where is the board? Where are the directors, please? The Dangote Flour Mills PLC, please. Coming next is Evans Medical PLC. And the next is First Aluminium Nigeria PLC. On my list is Great Nigeria Insurance PLC. Do we have a representative of Great Nigeria Insurance PLC? Yes. Please step forward. Thank you. And next on the list is John Holt PLC. And this looks really big. Julius Berger Nigeria PLC. Please, may the directors, please. There are 11 directors here, so quite very heavy. If it's a large construction company, then they have a lot of works to do. His Royal Highness Igwe Peter Anugu, JP and Officer of the Federal Republic, Dr. Ernest, are you here? Alhaji Zubairu Ibrahim, Engineer Jafar Damulak, Mrs. Belinda Ajoke Disu, Engineer Wolfgang Gosch, and Wolfgang Coleman, George Marks, Engineer Heinz Stockerson, Mutiu Sumonu, and Mrs. Gladys Olubusola Talabi. Please, could you please stand up for recognition? Julius Berger Nigeria PLC. The directors are here, please. And coming up next is Lasako Assurance PLC. The directors, please. The directors of Lasako Assurance, Shegun Balogun Adirin Ola Diso, Otumba Akindohoti, Kikelo Makasim, Akinlola Odusami, and Rilwan Oshinusi. For Lasako Assurance Nigeria PLC. And coming after Lasako Assurance is another insurance company, Linkage Assurance PLC, and the directors are Raymond Yembe, Anthony Howells, Tokeme Koroye, and Inam Udo Udoma. Please, let's give them a round of applause, please. 4 directors of that insurance company. Do we have a representative here, please? And the next on the list is Maya PLC, and the 5 directors on the list are Bamidele Akinola, Vivienne Bangboye, Olutoyin Okeowo, Olukayode Tijani, and Tony Ukboni. Maya PLC. And we're almost ending the first set of presentations. And next is Owando PLC. And 3 of the directors of Owando Nigeria PLC, Ogogo Akpata, Amuna Ali, and Nana Apia Koreng. For Owando Nigeria PLC, 3 of the directors. And after Owando Nigeria PLC's Okomu Oil Palm PLC, and representing this company is Peter Eguasa, a JP. And finally, in this first set of presentations, is NPF Microfinance Bank PLC. And the directors on the list are Audu Abubakar, Joseph Daramola, Ifeanyi Eke, Akinwumi Lawal, Jude Ohanehi, Mohammed Said, Azubiko Uda, and Emmanuel Walabi. These are the 8 directors on the board of NPF Microfinance Bank. Please, let's give them a round of applause. This is a microfinance bank. And those are the directors over there. Thank you very much. Would you please keep standing? Yes, thank you very much. Thank you very much, our presenters, Mrs. Asoile, who is director at CBI, and of course a member of the Council of the Nigerian Stock Exchange, Mr. Oshukaya. Thank you very much, Sheyi, for doing that first set. Of course, these are directors of these companies. We'll get to the companies towards the end of the program. I think it is time for us to listen to a very interesting and I'm sure very insightful presentation which is the keynote speech at this first ever Nigerian Stock Exchange and CBI Corporate Governance Rating System. Please, let's give our attention to Oscar Oyema, OON, the Chief Executive Officer of the Nigerian Stock Exchange.
Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, good evening. It is my pleasure to welcome you to this certificate award dinner designed to recognize listed companies and directors who excelled in the recently concluded Corporate Governance Rating System, Cgrs, certification exercise, and to highlight the benefits for strong corporate governance. I would like to begin by congratulating these companies and directors for successfully undergoing and passing the various stages of the Cgrs. You all deserve praise for making it through the rigorous certification process. Recall that we had only 8 companies that volunteered and submitted themselves for evaluation when we launched Cgrs in November of 2014. These companies were found worthy to bear the Cgrs mark of recognition after going through the stringent Cgrs processes. For today's occasion, 35 companies and 437 directors will be recognized and awarded Cgrs certificates consequent upon the successful Cgrs rollout to all listed companies. This is a testament that our listed companies and their directors are embracing the Cgrs certification process, which is aimed at promoting ethical business practices, transparency, and fair competition in listed corporates. Indeed, good corporate governance should result in improved profitability. As world trade increases, so does the number of companies which attract investment and trade rise. The level of a company's compliance to the tenets of corporate governance will determine the attractiveness of such a company to international investors. This could increase or decrease the level of foreign direct investment and foreign portfolio investment into a country through its well-run companies, as international investors are averse to companies with low levels of corporate governance practices and high reputational risk. A company that is regarded as having good corporate governance typically has access to a variety of financing options. Moreover, it is well established that companies with good corporate governance generally receive higher market valuations than those that are regarded as poorly governed. We all know that sound corporate governance practices in a nation will lead to higher performance in its economy, provide more sources for capital investments, and increase the credibility of shareholders. In line with our commitment of making our listed companies attractive and creating value for investors, we have created and today launched the NSE Corporate Governance Index, which tracks the performance of all Cgrs certified companies on the NSE. It will showcase companies with good corporate governance. The Corporate Governance Index has become a global best practice as more countries and markets have embraced the culture of establishing corporate governance indices. In a 2013 comparative analysis for the World Bank and IFC PGS advisors, 3 principal motives were identified as drivers for stock exchanges' launch of corporate governance indices. 1, to raise the national corporate governance ceiling by supplementing the existing national corporate governance framework of law, regulation, and code. 2, to give companies the opportunity to differentiate themselves by showing good corporate governance practices. And 3, to gain access to funds committed to good corporate governance practices and sustainability. Helping companies to distinguish themselves with a label of governance excellence is a key reason for creating a corporate governance index. It allows for the buildup of positive reputation that benefits companies, the stock exchange, and the marketplace as a whole. Companies on the index can expect to increase their access to capital, particularly from foreign investors. The NSE Corporate Governance Index, which has a base date of December 2015 and base value of 1,000, recorded a 26-month average return of 20.1%. The NSE Corporate Governance Index outperformed the NSE All-Share Index and the NSE 30 Index, but underperformed the NSE Premium Board Index. Also, the NSE Corporate Governance Index is highly correlated with other NSE indices. By far, the highest correlation coefficient was recorded with the NSE 30 Index at 99.6%, and closely followed by the NSE All-Share Index at 99.3%. In essence, all indices moved in tandem in nearly all cases. The observed correlation between the Corporate Governance Index and the All-Share Index reinforces observed trend in some emerging markets, including Brazil, China, and Italy. It can therefore be inferred that companies that determine the direction of the All-Share Index in these markets are mostly companies with good corporate governance practices. The Corporate Governance Index will therefore be a veritable tool for investors in their investment-making decision process and will provide opportunity for new products such as exchange-traded funds. The Cgrs certification is also a prerequisite for companies to migrate or list on the premium board of the exchange. The premium board features companies that adhere to international best practices on corporate governance and satisfy the exchange's highest standards of capitalization and liquidity. The Premium Board Index serves as a benchmark for investors looking to track the performance of large firms with excellent corporate governance and sustainable business models. Empirical studies show that similar indices in other jurisdictions outperform their market-wide index by double digits, and this is also evident with the NSE Premium Board. From inception to date, the Premium Board Index continues to outperform the benchmark NSE All-Share Index, with the Premium Board recording a total return of 92.93% versus the NSE All-Share Index's 53.80%. The Premium Board's performance continues to reinforce the sentiments of both foreign and domestic investors on the importance of corporate governance and sustainability. This is also reflected in the recorded growth of the global sustainability investment assets to $22.8 trillion in 2016, representing a 25% increment from the 2014 figures. These assets have investment preference for companies with strong corporate governance ratings and generally track corporate governance indices globally. Companies aspiring to be listed on the Premium Board of the Nigerian Stock Exchange must attain a minimum market capitalization of 200 billion naira as at the date of application, a minimum score of 70% on the corporate governance rating system, and maintain a minimum free float of 20% of their issued share capital or a free float value equal to or above 40 billion naira, as well as meet other standard listing criteria. As more companies become Cgrs certified, we expect to receive more applications for migration to the Premium Board from companies that have met the Premium Board criteria. Once again, I congratulate the companies and directors being honored today, and I urge them not to relent in their efforts to sustain the high level of corporate governance that has brought them thus far. Today's celebration is not a destination, but a continuous process that should be consistently maintained and further improved upon. Let me use this opportunity to call on other listed companies that were unable to complete the Cgrs process during the last rollout due to one deficiency or the other to improve on the identified gaps and conclude the process during the new review period, which is now open. This call also goes to companies that did not participate in the last exercise to immediately commence the process to meet the timeline of the new review period, as the certification is now compulsory for all listed companies. Before I close, I wish to condole with the board and management of Studio Press Nigeria PLC on the demise of one of their directors, Mr. John Akande, who assiduously participated in the Cgrs exercise and passed the fiduciary certification test before his death. Mr. Akande's certificate is available for collection here today by the company for transmission to his family. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, thank you for gracing this occasion, and have a beautiful evening.
Mr. Oscar Onyema, the Chief Executive Officer of the Nigerian Stock Exchange, we thank you very much. Please give him another very warm round of applause. If you are the CEO of the largest economy on the African continent, I'm sure you have a lot of work to do. And if you're running a school, doing an exercise, something close to an examination for company directors, then that's quite a lot as well. Now, I'm very happy to know that this is compulsory for every directors and every companies on the stock exchange. But what we've done earlier was to present certificates to directors of those companies who in their individual capacity passed the exercise and the test set by the Nigerian Stock Exchange and the Convention on Business Integrity. So we'll get into the companies themselves later on, and we'll have those presentations. But first, let's take about a few minutes to have a little bit of a panel of discussion and a bit of a Q&A to get to wrap our heads around the entire Cgrs. And to lead us to do this with a few number of individuals, put your hands together, please, for Tinuade Awe, who is the Executive Director in charge of Rules and Regulation at the Nigerian Stock Exchange.
Good evening, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. You're very welcome to this event. It gives me great pleasure to be moderating a panel of such distinguished individuals as I will call up to come and discuss issues on corporate governance. The first person that I would like to call is Mr. Akim Oyewale. Akim is the CEO of Stanbic IBTC Nominees, which is the custodial arm of the Stanbic IBTC group. And Akim is responsible for investors in this capacity with over 6.5 trillion naira in assets. Akim, please sit down here. Thank you. Next, I would like to call Eme Essien-Lor. Eme is the country representative for the International Finance Corporation, the IFC in Nigeria. Please give her a round of applause as she makes her way to the podium. And as Emma is walking up, I'd like to call Professor Fabian Ajogu, SAN. Professor Ajogu is a partner at Kena Partners, and he's also a professor of corporate governance at the Lagos Business School. Finally, I would like to call Brate Cement PLC, which is a company listed on our premium board. Our expectations are that this panel, with individuals from different areas of the market, will be able to digest the issues very appropriately with respect to corporate governance and really give us a fulsome time here this evening, and that we will see that that has been done through the questions and answers that we will get. Akim, I'd like to start with you. So there are certain initiatives, such as the corporate governance rating system. This evening, Oscar spoke about a corporate governance index. The corporate governance index will be available on the exchange tomorrow. And then we also have a premium board where the, one of the eligibility criteria for that board is that you have 70% in your Cgrs rating. As an investor with so many assets under your custody, what do you think those initiatives, those things that I just listed, what do you think that they will do in terms of your investment decision? Are they important to you as an investor in determining where to put your funds?
Thanks so much, Tinu, and I would like to say thank you to the Nigerian Stock Exchange and the CGI for introducing the Cgrs index into the Nigerian market. From our interactions with investors, investors till now, they've actually on their own decided to create in their respective offices what they term to be their own version of the corporate governance index of various companies in the Nigerian market. And this they do for all companies where investors invest across the globe. Companies are usually a reflection of their directors. And because of this, where you have a company that has a very strong corporate governance, you see investors flocking towards such a company, especially if such a company is actually producing good numbers in terms of their profits. I would like to, however, mention one thing which investors find very, very important when you talk about corporate governance. They do not like surprises. So they believe that when you have very strong independent directors outside of the executive directors of the companies, that is a sign that that company is keeping corporate governance as one of its key tenets. And we've seen several examples on the Nigerian Stock Exchange, even during the time the country was in a recession, during the time that the stock exchange was actually not performing so well when we had a bust. Companies that had very, very strong corporate governance still had investors piling in. And there is something we usually see as a trend, and that is that such companies usually have a very well-equipped investors relations team. They have CEOs and CFOs that are investor-friendly. They are always ready to speak to investors whenever they ask to speak to them and understand their strategy. They are not afraid to actually issue profit warnings when it was necessary for them to do so. And these companies always always ensure that they had regular conference calls with investors. Now, these are all, if you are doing so well, we'll let you know. We give you forward guidance on how we're going to come to help a lot of investors in actually realizing which companies can we actually look at, that are already high up there in terms of the corporate governance index. So I think this is a good thing that the NSE is doing. This is a good thing for the market as a whole, and I believe that it will encourage more and more companies in Nigeria to actually uphold the tenets of corporate governance. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Akim. So you think that companies that are able to interact, have a governance process for interacting appropriately with investors will do very well, and that the Corporate Governance Index also actually makes it easier for investors. They don't need to do the back-end work that they've been doing with respect to creating an index on their own because there's an index that's available at the exchange. Okay, on that note, I'd like to move on to Emma. Emma, the IFC has done a lot of work on corporate governance, both in Nigeria. I know that you had a program in Nigeria, and you have a program in several other African countries, and just generally around the world. When you've seen initiatives like the corporate governance rating system or a board on an exchange where one of the major eligibility criteria is a corporate governance rating at a certain level, what have you seen in other countries? How has that affected the national ceiling, if I may say so, of corporate governance in such countries? There's one beside you, Emma, but whichever one, okay, you want to look at me.
Thank you for the question, and it is good to be here at this event. I think one of the key things for us to keep in mind is that corporate governance is both an art and a science. So we know that there are standard processes that companies can put in place to ensure that they, quote unquote, tick the box on corporate governance. So that is something that it's well accepted across all the markets where we work. We've seen a lot of progress in that regard. But I think where it becomes interesting is where the art part of it comes in. And this is where it's important to, or at least what we've seen across the world, is that every country will have their own journey around this. So if you look at Brazil, that introduced their board, the Novo Mercado, about, I guess, 15 years ago, more than 15 years ago now. If you look at Turkey, who's also introduced their own sort of corporate governance index for their country, what you've seen in those cases is that it was very much a journey. I think Oscar talked about the fact that this is a journey. It's not a destination. And for each and every one of these situations, they had to take into account the specific cultural dimensions for their countries, and so how investors react to certain things, and they had to adapt. And so I think particularly in the Brazil case, when they sort of reflect on their experience being sort of the first country to kind of embark on this exercise, vision and leadership are two of the things that I think they were very good at. And the other piece of it is really perseverance. And so one of the things that we've seen is that when these initiatives are kicked off, there's a lot of enthusiasm, there's a lot of excitement, but I think the magic is going to be in the staying power of the companies who are participating, the staying power of the NSC to ensure the highest levels, so you don't have a situation where people are doing this tick box exercise where it actually doesn't mean anything. And we get to a point where there's really that kind of differentiation. Ultimately, we should see value for companies that are rated as corporate governance compliant, or whatever you want to call it. So certainly there'll be value for investors in that regard. But in order to make sure that it's not sort of a whitewashing exercise, that level of perseverance, making sure that sort of you're evolving to those highest standards is going to be key going forward. So again, Nigeria pioneers in a lot of different things. This is another one. I think maybe second in the continent. But I think that's what we'll be looking for. Can we stay the course so that companies that are listed here, when we look at those companies, we should be able to nod our heads and feel like these companies do demonstrate, they do model what good corporate governance is, not just for a Nigerian standard, but for a global standard.
Thank you, Emma. I think Emma is reminding us that it's a marathon and also reminding us that it's not a tick box exercise. And I think for the exchange, taking the feedback about ensuring that you're not helping to whitewash and ensuring that we keep at this and ensure that folks keep to the corporate governance standards for real, not just as something that's a whitewash, as I said. Okay, so I'd like to move on to Fabian. And Fabian, you're interesting in the sense that you're an academic. You also consult for corporates and regulators, as with your recent role with the Code for the National Communications Commission, the NCC. And so when you have an initiative like this rating system, or when you have an index, when you're consulting for a corporate in terms of their competitive edge, what role does an index like this play? What role does a rating like this play in ensuring that you sharpen that competitive edge, especially in an economy like this that's recovering from a recession and where we have all sorts of disruptions to business? How can this be something that corporates can parlay in a real sense of it?
Thank you, Tinu. It's interesting. There are so many people who think that the best way to enforce corporate governance is a sanction method. Now that works very well with a number of regulators, but it's also received wisdom that sometimes the stick and carrot approach go together. I see the new system as something which would encourage companies to compete in that space of who is going to be regarded as a very good company that observes the best practices of corporate governance. But there is some sort of note of caution that I would sound with the benefit of research in the field. The good man and my good friend Cgrs Pampa mentioned in his opening remarks that certain companies, certain people got away with doing not the right thing or did things the wrong way. Now, when you look at right, wrong, you could also deduce ethical, unethical. Now, I must then warn that when you give a statement, a Cgrs rating, for instance, just like a recommendation or reference, there are present statements that look to past tense about behavior in the past. They don't necessarily speak about future behavior. And so it's important to connect it with the point that Oscar Onyema made about this is not a destination. So it's important to sound that it's not a destination and that the key elements of compliance continue to be monitored. And so the rating system defines what is expected of a good company in terms of their best corporate governance practices. And to the extent that you meet those, it actually does a pre-sieving exercise for would-be investors and attracts investment in that space. But I would also just mention that some of the key things that investors would look at would be A, behavioral governance of the people who are charged with the affairs of managing the affairs of the company. And secondly, and this is very important, where lies the specific interest of the dominant shareholder? Is it residual in nature, in which case it's income minus expense, profit, tax, and then dividend? Such companies exercise excellent corporate governance. Or is a dominant shareholder's interest contractually structured, in which case it's taking out sideways by expense, transfer pricing, shared services, and all manners of things. And these are the things that are frightening away investors. So it's a good thing that the Cgrs rating is looking at these specifics, and I think it's a good thing for Nigeria, and it's a good pioneering effort by the NSC, and the CBI. Thank you.
Thank you, Fabian. I think you're echoing some of what Emma had talked about it not being a marathon. About it being a marathon, ensuring that it's not a tick box exercise, and ensuring that we look below. I think that's what you're saying. So this whole issue of having a dominant shareholder, you could have a situation where the shareholder, ostensibly, there's governance, but things are being done sideways, as you put it. I think that that's very interesting. And I would now like to move on to Brian. And Brian, one of the reasons why I think it's interesting that you're on the panel is because your company actually was one of the first 3 companies that was listed on the premium board. You accelerated your Cgrs rating in order to be able to be listed on that board. What were the reasons why your company wanted to be listed on the board? If you can share some of them with us, that's number 1. And then number 2, have those reasons, have you seen in the period of time that you've been listed that some of those reasons have come to, your reasons for doing that have come to pass, have been justified?
Okay, thank you very much. First of all, when we heard about the Cgrs program from the NSC, we thought it was a really great initiative, and obviously as the largest company listed on the NSC, we were very keen to be in the first group to be, sorry, a little bit of an echo. We were very keen to be in the first group that went through the process. And I think if you look, we went through the process in 2015, and in fact, we had been focusing quite heavily on our corporate governance, improving it in the years before that. But we really wanted to have an independent body to come in to test us, to see exactly where we are, and had we reached the international standards that we were aiming to achieve. And I have to say, as we worked through the process, while a lot of the things that we have been doing were very good, there were some areas where we were able to improve as we worked through the process. And I think that has sort of stood to us over time. And for us, strong corporate governance is absolutely critical. I think it reflects itself in two ways. First of all, strong corporate governance shows itself through improved operational capability. And I think if you look at Dangote Cement, only a few years ago, it was a relatively small company operating only in Nigeria. We're now a very large international company operating in many countries, and we've become a very complicated business. And I think that the focus on corporate governance has helped that transition into a very large company. I think without strong governance, that would have been very, very difficult. And obviously the second area, which we see as very important, is the one that Oscar mentioned earlier on. The stronger the corporate governance in a company is, the more attractive we are to investors. And I think particularly when you look at Nigeria, which is a country with so many opportunities, so many investors want to invest, but the one area that there is always a little bit of concern is corporate governance. So being able to demonstrate that we have international standards of corporate governance, I think the Cgrs process has definitely helped that. It makes companies so much more appealing both to debt and equity investors. So I think, I'd have to say the process, we embraced it. I think it had a huge benefits to the company, and I think we ended up being much stronger as a result of it.
Thank you very much, Brian. Based on what you've said, so you feel that the company believes that the effort that went into getting the rating and listing on the premium board has been justified by what has happened in the company, as well as the growth that the company has seen. Talking about growth and marathons and, staying power, Akeem, I'd like to go to you again. So I think one thing that I've seen through the comments that have been made is that it's a continuum. Do investors penalize companies because they're still on a certain part of the continuum? Because if we keep saying it's a continuum and you're not at the end, do you get a penalty from an investor because of that?
Yes, the answer is a straight yes. investors penalize companies that do not align with, that do not have strong corporate governance principles, and they also actually reward companies that have very strong corporate governance principles. I mean, we've seen examples even on the Nigerian Stock Exchange in the last couple of years. Companies that were seen to have very strong corporate governance, even when they went through very, very tough, very, very challenging regulatory challenges or economic or business challenges, investors still stood with them. I mean, they still asked for those shares. They still bought those shares. They still met the company. They were assured, you know, with the engagements that they had severally, that the company was going to be good, was going to get over its tough times. And we saw also investors that had a lot of negative issues, that did not have strong corporate governance. They did not see buyers for their stock. They were punished, and their share price just came down, I mean, because they were dumping their shares. So it's really, really obvious for a lot of companies that when you have strong corporate governance principles, investors would like to buy into your companies. And when you do not, or when you are opaque, you are not transparent, they just move away from you. No matter how well you are performing, they don't like such companies.
Thank you very much, Akim. Fabian, I would like to move to you now, just following from what Akim said. If you're in the role of an advisor of a company that's on the continuum, a company that has certain challenges and is thinking, how do I overcome these challenges? Is a rating system an appropriate way to try and get myself together in terms of making myself more competitive? What kind of advice do you give corporates like that?
Well, at the heart of corporate governance, it's really two key points. And I just like to sort of like break them down. One is a concept to use every day, ownership. And I choose to define it negatively. Anything you can destroy lawfully belongs to you. Like this jacket, I can burn it and no one can do anything about it. But the minute I take some money from people to dry clean it, to fit it better, the first thing I lose is the right to destroy it without at least explaining to these stakeholders that it has become necessary to burn the jacket. I lose all of that right when I do an IPO and when I get listed and pulling so many other things. The challenge is that a lot of core investors are not able to separate the fact that they no longer own this large enterprise. You might be the largest single shareholder, but you own shares in the capital of the company, not the company. So my advice would be to look at companies that have a practical and expressed understanding of this concept. Because even when companies seemingly are very successful, seem to do the right thing, you may still find that that element of I own this company has not quite left the minds of the founders or the core investors. The second concept that I look for in advising is, and it's interesting that you awarded certificates to those who went through the awareness, the fiduciary awareness test. Once somebody is incapacitated as a human being, he relies on others. That's why you have a committee in lunacy, in bankruptcy, in all sorts. So a company is in itself a lifeless, no arms, no legs, nothing. So it relies on the people, the board of directors, who then exercise this fiduciary right. Once you entrust to people, you cease to live for yourself, but for that poor, incapacitated entity, now the company. I would look for these two things. No matter how the boxes are ticked, if as an investor, and I know that the Stanbic IBTC nominee would look closely at this, if as an investor I can see, and this is the difference between the reality and the perception. The perception can only take so far, But if you take a close study and see that the twin concepts of ownership and fiduciary responsibilities are not embedded in that entity, it's only a matter of time before something comes up. So those are the two key things that I would urge whoever that I'm advising to look at, and actually inspires me to serve on a board, because directors should realize that it's in itself a risky business to be on the board. And I'll say that again. When a company does very well, the executives get bumper bonuses. When a company goes down, the board members may end up in Alagbon close. Thank you.
Thank you, Fabian. I think you certainly gave us a lecture, a mini lecture, which we didn't have to pay Lagos Business School fees for in that short contribution. But I would like to follow up on one of the points you made, which is about the culture in any country and the culture around ownership of property. And bringing Emma here, given the IFC's scope around the globe with respect to working in corporate governance in different countries, we often hear people say, oh, in Nigeria we have to do things in this manner, in Nigeria we have to do things in this manner. Is that true? Do you see in other countries where the IFC is involved and where you've tried to pursue corporate governance and tried to engender a culture of corporate governance within corporates or generally within the economy, do you see that there's that resistance in other countries as well? And what do you, an initiative like the Cgrs that is saying bite the bullet to international standards, how do you see that working in other areas where you've worked around the globe?
So I'm not sure that Nigeria is too different from many of the countries that we've worked in for many of the reasons that Fabian discussed. The nature of business is that it typically starts with a family and then it evolves over time, and so issues of, or how that company evolves in terms of its governance journey will sometimes be a challenge. So, so that's not unusual. We, as IFC, obviously most of what we do is invest in unlisted companies in terms of the equity space. We do have some investment in the listed company space, but most of it is focused on the private space. And we spend a lot of time focusing on corporate governance. We have an internal team to look at it. We have a number of toolkits internally for staff to look at it. So we spend a lot of time looking at it. The honest truth for us is that when we look at our portfolio globally, not just Africa, but globally, and we see, because obviously we've made some bad investments, as any investor would, it happens. And when we look at that portfolio of investments that have not done well, a large majority of the time, it's because of a corporate governance issue or a set of corporate governance issues. And this is globally. It's not just Nigeria or Africa. And so we recognize how important it is to early on focus on these issues as early as we can, bring the tools, the knowledge, bring the sense that that we're working with companies to help them along, but it's critically important to focus on it up front. So to your question around the index and what kind of impact it could have in Nigeria, I think that's still left to be seen. We're still in the very early stages of this. And so we have to track it, we have to pay attention to it, we have to have a very high level of ownership to see it through. So as a stakeholder, IFC is a stakeholder in Nigeria, obviously we want something like this to be very successful. But again, the lesson learned that we've seen in other parts of the world is that you need to have very senior buy-in. And the question will come when there's a company that's very powerful, it's very well known, but no longer qualifies. They've fallen out of the qualification criteria. What will you do? What will happen? When the system is shaken, how will the system respond? And so some of the things, those are the things I think we have to watch for over time. And I think it's still early days, but obviously we We think that an initiative like this could have a very significant impact on companies building their shareholder value and building their stakeholder value as well, not just shareholder, but stakeholder value in general.
Thank you very much, Eme. Given that we're talking about stakeholder value, from what you said, I'd like to move back to Brian now. And Brian, if you were going to advise a company that is reticent about going through the rating system, or is reticent about, now I've gone through the rating system, I don't want to be a peacock that's exposed, like Emma is talking about the companies on the index, people are going to be looking at those companies and saying what's happening to them. What would you say? What would you say to advise such a company, given that you've been on the premium board and you've certainly been out there? People are looking at Dangote Cement and obviously wondering if anything happens, what will be the reaction?
I mean, I think the process was very, very useful for us as a company. I mean, certainly the company has been run much better afterwards, and the timing of the process was perfect. It was just as we were about to do our international expansion. So there was a huge level of commitment in the company. We recognized we needed to govern the company a little bit differently because we were managing multiple jurisdictions compared to just Nigeria. I think it also obviously then keeps pressure on us to continue to focus on and to improve our governance. It is an area of significant focus from investors particularly. It's a bit like getting an international rating from S&P or from Moody's. Once you get there, you have to make sure you maintain your rating or you improve it. You can't afford to slip backwards. So I think once you start the process, there's no going back. You have to keep focusing and always improving it. And it's a process that is ongoing forever. And I think, for Nigeria, where there's so much opportunity, strong corporate governance is going to attract investors. So the companies with strong corporate governance are going to be the companies that get the investors. And the one issue I'd say, being on the premium board, we see has been quite significant. We always compare to having a listing in London, and I've done a couple of listings in London, and I have to say the CGR test was actually tougher than doing a listing in London, if I'm being honest about it. So I explained this during our investor meetings, and I think one of the things we have to do is work more closely with the NSE to promote that so that the investor audience understands the significance of the premium listing, and maybe at the moment they don't understand it as well as they should.
Very much. Now I'm going to go through the panelists for your last words, and I'll start with Eme.
You caught me off guard. Last word. So I guess just to emphasize the point I made earlier, what we've seen in Brazil, what we've seen in Turkey, is that perseverance is going to be an important part of this. In both of those countries, we have seen there's been a lot of criticism, there was a lot of skepticism about the process that they went through. They had different processes, but the process that they went through, there was a lot of skepticism, very healthy skepticism, I would say. So I would encourage those of you, we should look at this as an incredible innovation for the Nigerian capital markets. No question about that. But at the same time, I think it grows in its strength and its importance if there is constructive dialogue and constructive skepticism, and that helps it over time, the system actually improve and become stronger. So I guess I would encourage everybody to look at this as again, we've talked about this being a process, but also to look at it and make sure that it's doing what it's supposed to do. And the only way to do that is to make sure that market participants are constructively skeptical, and then over time that improves the overall system.
Fabian.
Yeah, thank you. Last words for me would be more on a congratulatory note to the NSE and CBI. It's a new chapter for us in Nigeria that we have this rating system. Most systems have shown that where it becomes a condition for listing or relisting, that corporate governance and behavioral governance is factored into those decisions. There's been significant increase in investment in that market. So we hope that this would translate to more investments in our market. And then on a last note would be to reemphasize that this is something that more people should aspire to get into, and it should be a marathon, not a sprint. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Brian, last words.
Very simply, I'd just say I'd encourage all companies to undertake the CGRS process. I think the company ends up much stronger at the end of it, and certainly ends up being a much more attractive investment proposition.
Thank you, Brian. Akim.
I will just say that, I look forward to the time where research analysts will be quoting and analyzing the CGRS index status of companies listed on the Nigerian Stock Exchange when they are making references to such a company. That will show that corporate governance has really come to stay, and that will encourage a lot of people to ensure that they are high up there when their ratings are being released.
Thank you very much. I would like a round of applause for our panel. Thank you very much. We can take a couple of questions, if anyone has questions for any of our panelists. Any questions? Okay. All right. I think at this point, I'd like to thank our panelists very much for their time and for the robustness of their contributions. And we look forward to continuing the dialogue about corporate governance, the CGRS, the CG Index, and of course, the Premium Board. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tinu Adiawe. A very lovely job there, bringing everyone up to speed, what to expect. And I took particular note of what Fabian said. When companies are doing well, you get your bonuses as directors. But if the company is not doing well, you might be having dinner somewhere else. A dinner that you didn't pay for. But it's quite instructive, and I think the CEO of the Stock Exchange, Oscar Onyema, made a very valid point. The new Corporate Governance Index, which is being launched today, is very good. For those of us in the media, and Akim of Stanbic made mention of that, we have to start reporting it and making reference to it. And I think that is one very good thing that will help this market in terms of exposing it to what the international investors see in terms of seriousness, in terms of corporate governance for companies listed on the stock exchange. And I hope all the companies here tonight, the 35 companies who will be coming up here for their certification and will be the pioneer companies for the launch of the new CG Index. And I hope you all advertise on Channels Television. Please do. I think we will move on and finish off with the directors. And these directors, with the first set, and as now we're concluding with my team here, those directors who have passed this test of fiduciary position that they hold in companies. And these are the directors who are having their dinner here tonight, because their companies have passed the test and they themselves have passed the test. Let's continue, and this time around I have the singular honor and privilege to invite Aiboje Aik Imokwede, the immediate past president of the Nigerian Stock Exchange, and also immediate past Managing Director and Chief Executive Officer of Access Bank PLC, as one of the presenters of this certification. Please, a round of applause for him. And joining Ig here is a senior advocate of Nigeria and a member or a director of the Convention on Business Integrity, Osaro Ehobame. Thank you. Yes, and the first directors who are here, they are from Consolidated Hallmark Insurance, Mary Adeyanju, Joel Avuri, Babatunde Daramola, Edi Efekoa, Ezeaku Obidegu, Adebola Odukale, and Ben Onwara. Let's give them a round of applause. These are directors of Consolidated Hallmark who have passed their fiduciary test. Do we have the chairman or the representative? Thank you, madam, from Consolidated Hallmark. And the next one, this is an ambush. The Council of the Nigerian Stock Exchange. Please, a round of applause for Aigoje Aigimokwede, Oladipo Aino, Yemisi Ayeni, Dunama Balami, Mohamed Dagash, Aliko Dangote, GCON, Kayode Falowo, Umaru Kwaranga, Abimbola Ogobanjo, Oscar Onyema, OON, Herbert Oje, and Michael Osime. Let's put a hands of applause, please, for these members of the team of the Nigerian Stock Exchange. These are members of the council. But of course, you know, we all know that the stock exchange is limited by guarantee. So if they didn't pass the test, then we have no business of being here tonight. Please, let's put our hands together again for the team of the Nigerian Stock Exchange. These are, quote and unquote, the directors of the Nigerian Stock Exchange.
Maybe I can take a picture with them and they think that I'm a director too.
Thank you. Another round of applause, please, for the council members of the Nigerian Stock Exchange. Yeah, they said they passed. I'm going to look for the exam papers and the markings. That's what Alaji Kwaranga says. I'm going to see who scored 70. You run exam. Okay, coming next is NASCON Allied Industries PLC, and the directors who have passed this fiduciary test are Halima Aliko Dangote, Fatima Aliko Dangote, Paul Farah, Knut. Okay, this sounds a bit foreign. I'm going to check the Google again. Where is Google? Okay. And Fatima Wali Abdurrahman. Please, let's give a round of applause to one of the directors who was representing other directors of this salt company, NASCON. And next are 4 directors of Presco Oil. That's not an oil company, that's a palm oil company, just in case you're wondering. So it's Presco. There's no subsidy on this one. Akenzua, Mr. Akenzua, Basse Edem, Felix Nwabuiko, and Osa Osunde. Let's give them a round of applause. These are directors of Presco Oil who have also passed through the eye of the needle set by the Nigerian Stock Exchange and the Convention on Business Integrity. Do we have a representative of this palm oil company, Presco? By the way, palm oil is more expensive than crude oil. But everybody wants a crude oil license. I don't know. And coming next after Presco directors are directors of Regency Alliance Insurance PLC. And 7 of them, Alliance Insurance. Please give them a round of applause, please. I've seen a lot of insurance companies here. Royal Exchange PLC and their 6 directors who have passed the litmus test: Anthony Digwe, Michael Magel, Ahmed Mohammed, Kenneth Odogu, Adeyinka Ojora, and Uwadi Okwaobaji. For Royal Exchange PLC, please, a round of applause for their representative, Briscoe. And 7 directors on the board of this company have also passed this certification, and they are being honored tonight. Adeola Adeojo Akin Ajayi, Ali Magudu, Mr. Sunday Nwosu, Mr. Dewale Olawoyin, Mr. Clement Olowo Konde, and Bukola Onajide. Let's give them a round of applause, please. From RT Briscoe, please. That's for RT Briscoe. And we're still in the category for directors of companies, listed companies. And for Studio Press Nigeria PLC, the company in which one of the directors has suddenly passed away, as we heard earlier from the Chief Executive Officer of the Stock Exchange. The directors who are here recognized tonight include also the deceased John Akonde, Charles Bori, Sudip Maitra, Kolawole Ogusanya, Michael Oni, and Roger Shello. Please may we have the other directors of Studio Press Nigeria PLC step forward for this recognition. And coming after Studio Press is Trans-Nationwide Express. And there are 3 directors here who are being recognized tonight: Oluwatosin Adebayo, Chidima Iheme, and Umar Jimada. From Trans-Nationwide Express, please. And coming next after this is Transnational Corporation of Nigeria, Transco, and 6 of their directors who are being honored this evening and been certified include Tony Elumelu, Ortega Emejo, Mr. Kayode Fashola, Stanley Lawson, Emmanuel Unorom, and Obinna Ufudo. Do we have the representatives of Transco here, please, tonight? Please, let's put our hands together for these distinguished directors of the company. Next are 3 directors of Total Nigeria PLC: Tejiro Ibru, Wilfred Konde, and Felix Majekodumi. We have Felix and the rest of the team here, please. From Total Nigeria PLC, now that is an oil company. Now we have 11 directors of a bank that will be coming after this presentation. And These 11 directors are from Unity Bank PLC. Please put your hands together for Aisha Abraham, Abubakar Bello, Dahiru Chade, Priya Hill, Dauda Eliya, Oluwafunsho Obasanjo, Sam Okagwe, Hakim Shagaya, Tommy Shomefun, Temison Twedo, and Yabawa Wabi. These are 11 directors of Unity Bank of Nigeria PLC. Thank you. Do we have any representative of Unity Bank PLC? And finally, in this category of directors, five directors of Unity Capital Assurance. And the names of these directors are Ibrahim Kazim, Bonaventure Okamo, Babatunde Olarinde, Patrick Oluyemi, and Farouk Yola. From Unity Capital Assurance, ladies and gentlemen, please let's give them a round of applause. 5 directors of this assurance company. And their representatives are stepping up now to the podium. Now we're getting to where the big masquerades, as they said in the local parlance, will be coming up. May I thank the former president of the Nigerian Stock Exchange. Please put your hands together for Aigboji Aigi Mokwede, and of course, Osaro from CBI. And finally tonight, the recognition and award of certificates to these companies who have done greatly well. And these 35 companies, as you heard earlier, will form the foundation of the new Corporate Governance Index of the Nigerian Stock Exchange. So may I therefore invite to the podium to do the presentations Oscar Onyema, the Chief Executive Officer of the Nigerian Stock Exchange, and of course the President of the Nigerian Stock Exchange, I beg your pardon, the President of the Nigerian Stock Exchange, Mr. Abimbola Ogunbanjo. Let's put our hands together for the President of the Nigerian Stock Exchange, who will now give that handshake to the representative of the Vice President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Please put your hands together for Ambassador Chiedu Osakwe, who is Nigeria's Chief Trade Negotiator and the Director General of the Office of Negotiation. There is a president and a vice president here. Yeah, he is the president of the Nigerian Stock Exchange, and ambassador represents the vice president. So we have this together. Now let's get started and look at these companies. Are you on page 9 of your program of events, please? If you haven't put in it, just look at it and let's follow this together in a bit of an alphabetical order. And this looks extremely heavy. And for those who are deserving, first, Access Bank of Nigeria, PLC. Please, let's have, yes, and their directors, please. 16 directors of Access Bank. Herbert Wigwe, who is, of course, the managing director of the bank. Paul Usoro, Benga Oyebode, Mr. Otubo, Titi Osuntoki, Ojinika Olagere, Kemi Ogumefun, Roosevelt Ogbonna, Obina Nwosu, Ernest Ndukwe, Mahmoud Issa Dutse, Elias, Victor Etoku, Emmanuel Chejina, Mosun Bello Olushoga, and of course, Mr. Woshika. please, could you please step forward? For Access Bank of Nigeria PLC, a very big round of applause, please, from the audience. These are the directors. This is an award not just for the directors, but for the company itself, having passed the Cgrs of the Nigerian Stock Exchange and the CBI. And still in this bit of alphabetical order, Africa Prudential PLC is next, and we're calling on, there are 4 directors. We're requesting the chairman and the chief executive officer to please. Africa Prudential PLC, please step forward. There are 4 directors: Peter Ashade, Peter Elumelu, Eniola Fadayomi, and Samuel Nwanze. Please, a round of applause, please, for African Prudential PLC. A round of applause for them, please. And next on the list is AXA Mansard Insurance PLC. And please, let's put our hands together for this company and their directors, a total of 11 of them. Please, could we have Mr. Adeyo Olushola please step forward, representing AXA Mansard Insurance PLC. Let's put our hands together, please. AXA Mansard, please. And coming next is Continental Reinsurance PLC. Please put your hands together for Continental Reinsurance PLC. And we are inviting Sir Ajibola Ogunshola to please step forward to the podium, as well as the Managing Director and Chief Executive of this insurance company. Continental Reinsurance PLC. A round of applause, please, for him. Representing Continental Reinsurance and other directors. And next is Cornerstone Insurance PLC. And please, we are inviting, please put your hands together for Paul Kokoricha to please step forward. And if the Managing Director and Chief Executive of the insurance company should please step forward as well. Representatives of Cornerstone Insurance PLC. And after Continental Insurance, you can see the list is Custodian and Allied PLC. And representing this insurance company is Michael Adeojo, who will be stepping forward for this award for the company, and the directors who are also here tonight, 5 of these 5 directors of Custodian and Allied Insurance PLC. And getting ready to come to the podium will be Dangote Cement PLC and 10 of their directors who are hereby being honored tonight. from Dangote Cement PLC. Let's put our hands together, please. And we're inviting the brand representative of the president and chief executive of this cement company to please step forward. The representative of Aliko Dangote, please step forward. A round of applause. And another company from that stable, Dangote Sugar Refinery PLC, is also being honored tonight and being certified with 5 of their directors. Please, may we have come to the podium representative of Aliko Dangote, and I can see Alhaji Abdullahi Sule leading the rest of his team. Please, let's give them a round of applause, please. And the next on the list is Diamond Bank PLC. A round of applause, please, for Diamond Bank PLC. And coming after you've gotten a diamond is you get a guarantee, and that is GT Bank of Nigeria PLC. May we have the representative of Diamond Bank PLC, Mr. Chris Ogbeche. Guarantee Trust Bank PLC is the next one. And do we have Osaratin Demure here, please, representing GT Bank PLC? Please, let's put our hands together for them. Please, if you are here, please step forward. The Managing Director and Chief Executive Officer of Guarantee Trust Bank is here to receive this certification on behalf of the bank. And coming up next is eTransact International PLC. Ladies and gentlemen, this company, including 7 of their directors, that includes Wole Abegunde, Sullivan Akala, and Valentine Obi, are here tonight. Please, let's put our hands together for them. That is the team from eTransact. And for FBN Holdings PLC, that's the next company on the list. FBN Holdings PLC with 6 directors that include Dr. Oba Otudeko, CFR, Mr. Bisi Onosanya, Alhaji Abdullahi Mahmood, Alhaji Bello Machido, Oye Hassan Odukale, MFR, and Chidi Anya. Please step forward. Let's put our hands together for FBN Holdings PLC. And coming up next, being recognized next on this list, this prestigious list, is Fidelity Bank PLC, including 11 of their directors. May I therefore request Ms. Ernest Ebi, representing and leading the team of Fidelity Bank, to please come to the podium. Fidelity Bank of Nigeria, PLC. And next, after Fidelity Bank, is Flour Mills of Nigeria, PLC. And please, let's put our hands together for John Comanteros, who is representing the directors of this company who are here also tonight. So please step forward. Flour Mills of Nigeria, PLC. And after Flour Mills PLC is Forte Oil Nigeria PLC, and 6 of their directors, of course, including the chairman, Mr. Femi Otedola, Julius Omodayo Owotuga, Anil Dua, Philip Akinola, Akinfemiwa, who is the chief executive officer, and Christopher Adeyemi. Please, do we have the representative of Forte Oil PLC come up for this certification ceremony? And coming after Forte Oil is GlaxoSmithKline Consumer Nigeria PLC. Please, let's put our hands together for Edmond Onuzo, representing 7 of the directors who are also being certified tonight, the company, and 7 of their directors who have passed through this exercise. For GlaxoSmithKline Consumer Nigeria PLC. Do we have the representatives of GlaxoSmithKline, please? And for this particular session, we have Guinness Nigeria PLC after this presentation. Please, let's put our hands together for Babatunde Savage, leading the team of Guinness Nigeria PLC, 11 of their directors who are qualified and are now certified. Please put your hands together for Babatunde Savage, who is leading other 10 directors of Guinness Nigeria PLC that include Mr. Bismarck Rwani, Ronald Plumridge, Rory Okefe, Peter Ndegwa, Mrs. Samabola Johnson, Philip Jenkins, Joseph Iruku, Sunday Dogoyaro, Cephas Afemuba, and Zainab Abdurrahman. Let's put our hands together, please, for Guinness Nigeria PLC. A round of applause, please, ladies and gentlemen, and also a very big round of applause for our certificate presenters. May I say a very big thank you, Ambassador Osakwe, for being part of this. Thank you very much. Let's put our hands together for Ambassador Osakwe and the President of the Council of the Nigerian Stock Exchange as well, Mr. Ogumbanjo, for doing us this honor. And finally, the final batch will be presented by the Chief Executive Officer of the Nigerian Stock Exchange, Mr. Oscar Onyema. Please come to the podium. And Mr. Soji Apampa, who is the co-founder and Vice Chairman of the Convention on Business Integrity. these two gentlemen have passed their own exercise and examinations as well. So please give your rounds of applause to them. So they are duly qualified to make presentation to others. And first on the list is Honeywell Flour PLC. Please put your hands together for Honeywell Flour PLC and 13 of their directors who are being honored tonight. Please, let's have the representative of this, of Honeywell Flour, please step to the podium. Oba Otudeko is representative here for Honeywell Flour PLC. And coming after Honeywell Flour Mills PLC is Lafarge Africa PLC. Please let's welcome to the podium Lafarge Africa PLC and 10 of their directors. Please put your hands together for Bolaji Balogun, who is expected to lead the rest of this team for Lafarge Africa PLC, one of the 35 companies who are the flag bearers of the new Cgrs and the founding members of the new CG Index. And coming after Lafarge Africa is Nemeth International Pharmaceuticals PLC. Please put your hands together for these healthcare companies and 6 of their directors. And please put your hands together for Mr. Ambrose Ojiako, who is leading the team of Nemeth International Pharmaceuticals PLC tonight for this press certification ceremony. And after Nemeth is NEM Insurance PLC. Ladies and gentlemen, put your hands together for NEM Insurance and 5 of their directors who will also be part of these 35 companies. And we're inviting Fidelis, Mr. Fidelis Ayebai, to please step forward to the podium with the rest of the 5 directors who are receiving their certificate at this event. That is NEM Insurance PLC. Please put your hands together, ladies and gentlemen, please. And the next will be Nestle Nigeria PLC. Nestle Nigeria PLC and 5 of their directors are also being honored tonight. This certification, David, Mr. David Ifesulike, please step forward. Mr. Ifesulike, please. from Nestle Nigeria PLC. And after Nestle Nigeria is Nigerian Aviation Handling Company. Please put your hands together, ladies and gentlemen, for Nigerian Aviation Handling Company, PLC, and they're coming up next year with their team. Nigeria Aviation Handling Company, PLC, please step to the podium. Thank you. And after Nigerian Aviation Handling Company, being certified also with a certification tonight, is Nigerian Breweries PLC. Please put your hands together for Nigerian Breweries PLC, and of course the company, including 6 of their directors. And the chairman, Mr. Chief Kola Jamodu, is also being invited. Nigerian Breweries PLC, please step forward for this certification in corporate governance rating. And please, the next company after Nigerian Breweries is PZ Cuisines Nigeria PLC. Please, ladies and gentlemen, put your hands together for another company on this very important and distinguished list. For PZ Cuisines Nigeria PLC and 6 of their directors who are receiving their certificates tonight. For PZ Cuisines Nigeria PLC, please. And please, getting ready to come to the podium is Red Star Express PLC. Ladies and gentlemen, Red Star Express PLC and 7 of their directors, and from Red Star Express, Mohammed Koguna, please lead your team for this certification. That is Red Star Express team. Next is Seplat Petroleum Development Company, PLC. Seplat Petroleum, with 12 directors being certified tonight. Mr. Ambrose Ojiako, please step forward for Seplat Petroleum Development Company, PLC. And leading the team is Austin Avuru himself, who is, I'm looking at him there. Okay, he also qualified. Yes, I have to check whether his name was there. Yes, he passed the exam, yes. Austin Avuru and the rest of the team, thank you very much. Ambrose Ojiako, thank you very much. And this is an oil company. And coming after Seplat Petroleum Development Company is Stanbic IBTC Holdings PLC. Ladies and gentlemen, Stanbic IBTC PLC and 8 of their directors here tonight, including Shola David Boha, Ifeoma Esiri, Balama Manu, Atedo Peterside, Sim Shabalala, and Dominic Brunsels. I hope I got that right. Stanbic Holdings PLC, please, ladies and gentlemen. And on my list tonight, and coming up next is Transcorp Hotels PLC. Ladies and gentlemen, Transcorp Hotel and 6 of their directors have been certified, and they are being honored also tonight and also have their name on the list. Representing Transcorp Hotels PLC, Sotega Emeho. And coming after Transcorp Hotels PLC is Unilever Nigeria PLC. And for Unilever Nigeria PLC, we have Nemeka Achebe. Please lead the rest of your team to the podium for this certification. Unilever Nigeria PLC. And of course, the directors. And coming after Unilever is United Bank for Africa PLC. Please, ladies and gentlemen, put your hands together for UBA. And the chairman is none other than Mr. Tony Elumelu. United Bank for Africa, the bank, as well as 11 of their directors. And coming after this, after United Bank for Africa, is United Capital PLC. Please put your hands together for Mr. Chika Modi, leading the United Capital as a company, and other directors, 5 directors of this company for this certification ceremony. And coming after United Capital PLC is WAPIC Insurance PLC, with 7 of their directors who are also being honored tonight. WAPIC Insurance PLC and 7 of their directors. And the chairman of WAPIC Insurance PLC is Iboje Ig Imokwede. Let's put our hands together for I, the immediate past president of the Nigerian Stock Exchange. And I has also been certified. Thank you. And as we're moving towards the end, Wema Bank PLC, ladies and gentlemen, with 6 of their directors, the chairman, Mr. Babatunde Kasali, please lead your team. Wema Bank of Nigeria PLC, with 6 of their directors, the company, the bank, and 6 of their directors. And finally, ladies and gentlemen, Zenith Bank of Nigeria PLC, please put your hands together for Zenith Bank PLC and 9 of their directors. And the chairman, Mr. Jim Ovia. Please put your hands together for Zenith Bank of Nigeria PLC, and 9 of their directors are certified under the new Cgrs. Please, a round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. And thank you very much. Please, a round of applause for the CEO of the Nigerian Stock Exchange, Oscar Oyema, and Soji Apampa, a co-founder of the Convention on Business Integrity. Now, I'm the only one left to get a certification tonight. So may I please, ladies and gentlemen, may we please take our seats as we're rounding off this very important and epoch-making event. Please, let's put our hands together, ladies and gentlemen, for the representative of the Federal Republic, of the Vice President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, Professor Yemi Osinbajo, SAN, GCON. Please welcome Ambassador Chiedu Osakwe, who is the Chief Trade Negotiator and Ambassador, the Office of Negotiation. Please, let's have his closing remarks, please.
Not as tall as you are. Your Excellencies, captains of Nigerian industry, ladies and gentlemen, good evening. It's almost impossible to fill the shoes of our Vice President, Professor Yemi Osinbajo, but he has given me the honor to make a set of closing remarks on his behalf. So let me read a set of remarks that he has put together. My heart and my head are here, as is my spirit. Regrettably, prior commitments impede me from attending this ceremony tonight. Congratulations to the worthy recipients of the corporate governance rating system, 33 companies, 437 directors that have passed the certification test. Please join me in giving them a huge round of applause. Congratulations to the steering board of the corporate governance rating system, the leadership of the Nigerian Stock Exchange, and the leadership of the Convention on Business Integrity. The corporate governance rating system helps provide a common basis to define good corporate governance for the listed companies. It builds on the reforms and successes that have been achieved by Mr. Oscar Onyema and his team in the Nigerian Stock Exchange. Similarly, I commend Soji Apampa for his original commitment to the founding of the Convention on Business Integrity. Both organizations have done a lot for the economy, and they hold a gravitational pull in attracting and retaining both foreign and domestic investments. The work of the Nigerian Stock Exchange and the Convention on Business Integrity in the area of corporate governance reforms in Nigeria is commendable and landmark setting. Your work is about the economic future of Nigeria. Your work is about the competitiveness and the rebranding of Nigeria. Your work is high value and your work is indispensable. Government and the private sector are linked. Success is shared and mutually supportive. Therefore, government will continue to actively encourage the partnership between the private sector and the government. Good governance and institutional reforms to promote the public goods of transparency, welfare, and growth are as relevant to the private sector as they are to the public sector. Good governance is good for business, and good governance is as good for the private sector as it is for the public sector. The Nigerian Stock Exchange has emerged as a solidly organized and well-regulated financial market, where securities are bought and sold based on the forces of supply and demand. The partnership with Convention on Business Integrity is consolidating a leadership role for the Nigerian Stock Exchange. You are defining an excellent brand about that globally rare combination of wealth and morality. You enjoy the support of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Improving security, tackling corruption, and revitalizing the national economy are the three key priorities for the government of President Muhammadu Buhari. This private sector certification ceremony by you in the private sector goes to the core of these three priorities. Good governance tackles corruption. Corruption defeated is growth resurgent. Growth, enhanced welfare, and expanded job opportunities will reduce insecurity. The present administration has implemented far-reaching measures aimed at blocking public revenue leakage. These include the Treasury single account, the Presidential Initiative on Continuous Audit, joining the International Open Government Partnership, monthly operational and financial reporting by the NNPC, and the Initiative for Efficiency Units in ministries, departments, and agencies of government. Not least, is the voluntary asset and income declaration scheme being implemented by the Federal Inland Revenue Service in collaboration with state revenue services. On the economic front, the government of President Buhari has vigorously pursued policies aimed at ensuring macroeconomic stability and improved business environment in the country. The stabilization of the exchange rate, the global success to establish an enabling environment for business, these are all aimed at attracting local and foreign investment. Indeed, the efforts of government have been acknowledged, not just by the World Bank Doing Business ranking, which saw Nigeria moved up 24 places from 197 place in 2017, ranking to 145 in the 2018 ranking, as well as featuring Nigeria in the top 10 reforming economies, but more importantly, in the increasing return of foreign direct investment to the country. I am delighted to note here that we have been able to record these modest achievements with the collaboration of the private sector with us on the platform of the Presidential Enabling Business Environment Council. Policies and regulatory action by the government shall never be enough. The role of the private sector in good governance go well beyond the corporate boundaries. This is why it is most welcome to note that the private sector is working strenuously to improve ethical business practices as demonstrated by the Cgrs. It is one thing for government to create the enabling environment for investment, but another for individual businesses to inspire the confidence that prospective investors desperately require. This is why sound corporate governance becomes critical. Poor corporate governance culture in an economy or in an individual business leads to higher risk premiums and a higher cost of capital for an economy or a firm. The federal government of Nigeria shall continue to strengthen the regulatory framework for corporate governance in Nigeria. Through the Corporate Affairs Commission, the Central Bank of Nigeria, the Financial Reporting Council, the Securities and Exchanges Commission, and other relevant regulatory agencies. The federal government of Nigeria welcomes the effort of the private sector in this direction, being led and demonstrated by the Nigerian Stock Exchange in collaboration with the Convention on Business Integrity. All our work at all levels must converge. Good corporate governance, domestic policy reforms, and associated regulatory action are all geared to improve Nigeria's productivity, competitiveness, and a high-quality Nigerian brand. Gradually, these are being reflected in our interface in international economic relations. This is why a key priority for Nigeria's trade and investment negotiators is the integration of domestic Nigerian businesses into regional, continental, and global value chains. Your work to promote good corporate governance matters hugely. These are being promoted as the standards in our trade and investment agreements with other nations. Your work shall enable Nigeria to secure better and higher quality agreement at all levels of global best practices. Your efforts in the private sector and our efforts in the public sector converge on the foundation of the economic recovery and growth plan. We have a common purpose. We have a common purpose to restore growth, invest in Nigerians, and build a competitive economy. Finally, I want to extend well-deserved congratulations first to all the awardees, the management of the Nigerian Stock Exchange and the CBI, as well as those who have worked tirelessly in the steering committee and other roles that have contributed in the success of the rating and this certification ceremony today. They deserve our commendation and applause. Those were the remarks I had to make on behalf of the Vice President. Just a couple of thoughts that I have to leave with you. Over the past 5 years, Nigerian negotiators have been negotiating a single market for trade in goods and services on the African continent. We have completed that work in Kigali, Rwanda, on the 21st of March, next month. President Kagame will host all African heads of state and government, and they have all confirmed that they would come to sign the agreement that would launch the African Continental Free Trade Area. What better place but to place it on the radar screen of the icons of the Nigerian economy and the captains of our industry, that you now have the African market, not just the ECOWAS market, but the African market, to maximize the opportunities. I will report to the Vice President that I told you, the captains of industry, that you now have the African market to play with as an integrated market. And knowing Professor Shimbajo, I know what he will say. Unleash them on Africa and make it count for Nigeria. Thank you very much indeed.
The representative of the Vice President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Let's give him another round of applause, please. And a very quick photograph, just as we round it off, with the President of the Council of the Nigerian Stock Exchange, the former President of the Stock Exchange, Aigi Mokwede, and the Stock Exchange CEO, Oscar Onyema, and of course, Shoji Apampa, who is the co-founder and Vice Chair of the Convention on Business Integrity. Please, while you remain standing, ladies and gentlemen, please may we all rise for the anthem of the Federal Republic of Nigeria to close this event formally, please. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the Nigerian Stock Exchange and the Convention on business integrity. We thank you very much for being part of this epoch-making, Better for Business Corporate Governance Rating System Certification Ceremony. Do have a great evening, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you very much for coming.